So to this point, my trips in my Model 3 have been to work, around town, doing some different things around, not really going very far. I've gotten on the highway once. I think I went like 1 or 2 exits up and got off. But today, I'm actually taking a small road trip. I'm actually driving about 40 miles to another town. I'll be there for most of the day, so I'll be driving around a little bit, and then I've got the 40 miles home. I have no range anxiety, don't get me wrong on that. I think I'm fine that way. I'm all charged up. I have almost 200 miles of charge. No big deal. But this is the first time I've driven it in rush hour, in traffic, on the highway for any distance, and it happens to be raining today, so that just makes things more interesting. So it'll be an interesting experience. It's sort of that first test to try and get out a little bit further and branch out and see how it goes, because I haven't really done anything beyond these simple little drives around town. And, had no issues. It's just going to be interesting to see how it works. And since my Model 3 still hasn't been updated, I still have autopilot on. I'm gonna have to play with it a little bit, the adaptive cruise control as I'm going, just to see how these different functions work. I'm kind of curious how they work. I know they're gonna get turned off soon because my Model 3 will be downgraded at some point. But for the moment, I wanna see how they work and kind of just get a feel for them, because I'd like to know if it'd be something I'm interested in later. So anyway, I'll be taking the trip in a few minutes, and I'll have to give you updates as I go along. So since I charged last night, I've driven 42 miles. It's 11 kilowatt hours off the batteries. There's still 40 left. I'm using 256 watt hours per mile. That's much better than the 311 I used in my original calculation when I was figuring out how far I could go and what my MPGE was. And you can see I still have 142 miles left that I can go in here. So I'm in good shape. All right, so no problem. Made it up to my destination here. It was about 42 miles that I drove. Not a big deal. I played around with some of the features in the autopilot. The adaptive cruise control never actually engaged, just because the traffic was flowing the whole time and the speed limit was the same on the interstate the whole time, so never got a chance to use that. But it was interesting to watch all the traffic around me show up on the screen and be able to use the cruise control and kind of go along at the constant speed. It's no different than any other cruise control in any other car. That felt very familiar. The differences were when it came to braking and having to slow down and do some things, it just felt like I was going at a different pace. You would take your foot off the gas, the accelerator, off the gas, that's funny. Take your foot off the accelerator and it would slow the car. And then you could touch the brakes to change it if you wanted to. But it was interesting to kind of play around with it a little bit and do that. I also used the map navigation feature. I went ahead and just put it in the map just to see how that worked out. And that was actually pretty cool. It worked out as I expected, more or less. It was pretty good. It kept me going in the right direction. It talked to me along the way and told me where I needed to turn and so forth. So I thought that was pretty slick. No different than like using Google Maps or something, except it's in the car. And as you're driving along, you've got the whole thing showing you where you're going. So pretty cool. All in all, successful trip. Now I have 142 miles left on the battery. So that'll give me the day's worth of charge. And I'll probably use 40 or 50 miles while I'm here today, and then drive home, which is going to be another 40 miles. So it'll be interesting to see if I feel any range anxiety as I'm heading home. If I need to, I can always stop at a Supercharger. There are some around. I can always just click the button to see where the closest ones are and then kind of work from there. So we're about home and we've got 43 miles left. So out of that 190 or so, we got 43. It says we drove an actual 110 miles during the day, 111 miles. So that means that the efficiency is not quite 1 mile per actual mile driven, the way it uses it. So there's some discrepancy there, and I'm assuming it's because I was parked a few times and had the air conditioner running, so it was using it a little bit more. But seeing the 267 watt hours per mile and realizing that gas prices went up again, that means that I'm very, very close to being just over 100 mpge on this trip, which is pretty impressive. So I'm pretty proud of what we've been able to do. But no range anxiety, really. I looked at it and it was this many miles, and I'm like, that's all right. That many miles feels okay to come home with. We were no more than about 40 miles from home at any point anyway. So felt like I did pretty well in terms of actually getting home. So it was a good trip. My first foray into this. You noticed that it wasn't quite 1-to-1. It was about 1.5 to 1, 1.25 to 1, something like that, of my actual miles traveled versus the mileage that went down on the battery. So interesting to kind of keep that in mind as I look at how I can actually travel that way and what it's going to cost me to travel that way. And if I look at the actual mileage that was left there, you notice that it turned yellow when it said there was 43 miles left. When it got below 45, it turned yellow to let me know, and I'm assuming it turns red when it gets down to the 10% range. That would be about 20 miles left or so. 22, 23, something like that. So interesting, you know, kind of interesting to take the first road trip. Now that I've done it and I've experienced it, I kind of know more of what to expect. I had no range anxiety, as I said, but I was a little concerned a couple of times about how much was left. When I got back in the car to drive home, I had 100 miles left, and I knew there was going to be traffic on the way home. I was pretty sure that it was going to be fine. But, you know, as we were getting further along and there was more traffic, I had that moment of hesitation. I never worried about it, and I never worried about actually charging, but I did have to think about it a little bit. So anyway, that's how it worked out. Good trip. My first experience doing it, I thought it was pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. And can't wait to take another longer road trip and see how it works out.